Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the WCW Saturday Night Edition for the 16th of November 1991. Basic enough series actually here. To be honest, it's more of um, I wouldn't say complete squash type match, but at the same time, kind of, in that we have Ron Simmons basically talking about some of the challenges that he's faced in trying to be WCW champion and promising he's still going to pull that together and pull that off, which I guess is good enough, but at the same time, kind of anticlimactic after his losses in the previous several weeks. Then we have Cactus Jack and TC Carter. Cactus Jack, of course, at the time, kind of going back and forth with none other than Abdullah the Butcher. We're partners, we're friends, we hate each other, and back and forth and back and forth. Cactus punch kick, the big diving elbow off the apron, and ultimately a double underhook DDT, leading him in the direction he wants to go. Not exactly a major match challenge here. TC Carter, relatively regular enhancement talent at the time, and for the most part, Cactus, again, more willing to throw his body to the wind than any other. Then we go to Arachnaman, who is a relatively newcoming guy in the area against Pat Rose. Arachnaman obviously doing the Spider-Man knockoff gimmick. Very basic stuff. Actually getting him ready for more series of matches with Steve Austin as we're going forward. Arm bars and the other basic stuff by Arachnaman. For the costume, you'd think he'd be more of a high flyer than he's allowed to be here, although not saying he's a terribly ineffective high flyer, but more arm bars, arm locks, a couple of drop kicks here and there. Certainly falling after the Jushin Liger come up in the next couple of months, as it were. Then we go to the WCW Magazine segment. Very basic segment. Eric Bischoff doing the hosting duties there, hyping the Clash of the Champions upcoming. Clash of the Champions, of course, having a rich history by this point. Clashes up until, I don't know, 88 to 90. I enjoyed Clashes up until about 94. So the 88 to 94 version when Hogan comes in is there. And to be fair, I enjoy WCW 88 to 94 a lot better than the post-Hogan era as well. Then we kind of, hype for the Clash. We kind of go through that. Obviously, we'll cover the Clash itself at a later date. Going to cover all 35 of those eventually anyway. Dustin Rhodes still coming in at a reasonably good clips, arm bars, arm locks, and the like, takeovers and such. Rhodes in a pretty quick match with Greg Sawyer. Only a couple of minutes here. Doesn't really need a lot more than that, just on the basis of what they're trying to accomplish. Also, Rhodes kind of gets, in a couple of minutes, gets an armbar and an arm lock. Arn Anderson warning Dustin Rhodes, almost like with the history of his father, warning him about Barry Windham getting laid out as part of the Halloween Havoc hype. Also warning him about things not going according to plan in a lot of ways for him. Says he doesn't want him to get up in all the business of Dangerous Alliance forthcoming, and kind of pats him on the side of the face, kind of like a joke. Mr. Hughes with Harley Race. Harley Race, of course, managing Mr. Hughes. Hughes supposed to primarily be Lex Luger's bodyguard, but not the way that goes. Buddy Baker, relative, I guess, newcomer to the enhancement talent, and obviously playing the role of the guy that gets beat up a ton. Hughes, punch kick, very basic stuff, and ultimately managing to get things going in a decent direction. Missed drop kick by Hughes that didn't look all too pleasant either. Sidewalk slam, and Hughes gets a decent enough victory here. Hughes also kind of gets, put forward Harley Race. Manages to, or actually, there's an attack on Mike Graham, who's doing a bit of a enhancement thing, and they kind of are teasing the Teddy Long, Johnny B. Bad, and other individuals facing off. Flying Brian facing off against Diamond Stud, Flying Brian and Mike Graham, Diamond Stud, and um, Johnny B. Bad, and Teddy Long in a 3-on-2 handicap match. Kind of a goofy deal. Mike Graham at the time still doesn't really fit here at all, but they're trying. I think Dusty Rhodes has an allegiance to him because of his involvement with the Florida office, but Mike Graham just does not belong. Anyway, Graham goes to the top, wrist locks on Scott Hall. Not really a major run there either, and Graham kind of going right after Scott Hall. Hall manages to get tied up in a modified Indian deathlock type maneuver. Hall coming up onto his feet and none too happy with all of that. And ultimately, Brian Pillman hits the drop toe hold, basic maneuvers along the way, and managing to do what he can where he can. Inverts on the knee. Brian Pillman also manages to kind of hit the bridge across the knee, and again, there we go. The nature of things here is Scott Hall kind of coming up, and aka the Diamond Stud kind of coming up, and I don't really remember the nature of how Teddy Long began to become involved with Hall. Seems kind of weird. Needless to say, Johnny B. Bad doesn't belong in this match either because he has too little experience to execute the match well. And finally, there is a pin by Brian Pillman on the adversary. Lex Luger talks about the various challengers. Basically says no one is worthy of challenging him for the World Heavyweight Championship. Got to remember, Luger really, July, August, September, October, November, less than 5 full months in here. We see a Rick Steiner match. Rick Steiner, of course, kind of doing the get ready for a match with various challengers, as it were, and Rick Steiner against Oz. Oz is later Diesel. That match is really clunky. Oz gets a couple of offensive maneuvers, but Steiner looks better. Steiner also manages to get a couple of shots in. Gut wrench suplex by Oz, which looks pretty powerful, but it's needless to say not exactly the best of outways as far as challenges is concerned. Steiner hits a German suplex on Oz and rolls through, hits the Steiner line, and Rick Steiner gets the victory over Oz. Think about that. Rick Steiner beating none other than Vinny Vegas, a.k.a. Oz, a.k.a. Diesel, to Kevin Nash, all this time ago in a singles position. Top rope Bulldog, the final move of that match. And then we see Steve Austin. Austin coming out next. Austin having a match alongside Vader in that. So Austin and Vader, who would have been an interesting team, defeating Tom Zink and PN News. 10:08, Austin pins News when Vader hits an elbow drop on News from behind the referee's back. News has Austin covered following a splash off the top rope. Prior to the bout, it was announced that News would face Vader. Thanksgiving night at the Omni, Lady Blossom was announced to be in Austin's corner but didn't appear. No mention given as to why she did not appear. Needless to say, they certainly do run through a good number of matches here. PN News and the Z-Man is kind of interesting. Z-Man trying to dance and doing a horrible job of it, as it were, and things are pretty basic there. Steve Austin trying with PN News doesn't get nearly as much as most people would hope he gets. Big body slam into a power slam by News. News trying to get things going back in his general direction with a series of brawls. Vader in this match, actually, Vader and Austin could have been a good team. Vader obviously using more of a power advantage. Bails out to the floor, and we don't see as much Harley Race. Vader, of course, the international star who could have probably lived on his own caveats, for lack of a better terminology. Double head cruncher by Zink and Austin. Vader comes back in, cuts his man off, and it looks as though News is going to win, but they come behind from Vader gets the victory. Steve Armstrong against U.S. champion Rick Rude, which I think there's the U.S. No, maybe not. U.S. champion actually is crowned on that particular day or soon thereafter. But Rude, new to the area, obviously doing the U.S. Championship thing in the upcoming months, and Rick Rude looking really good here in 1991. Remember, he'd been off WWF TV for a good bit at this time. Rude managing to go after Steve Armstrong. Armstrong still a babyface at this point, although that doesn't last too terribly much longer. And Rick Rude continues to be a guy who, roundabouts and basic stuff. There's, back and forth. Rude tries a chin crusher. Rude does a bunch of selling for none other than Steve Armstrong along the way. Comes off from the top rope, and we again get a comeback by Rude. Rude manages the Rude Awakening, gets the win, promises to be your U.S. champion, beating Sting and eliminating Sting from WCW forever. Paul Heyman still talking about wanting to be on the championship, not championship committee, but board of directors for WCW. George South against Van Hammer. Van Hammer, I think, in one of his first matches here in WCW at the time. Super green, super not ready, but this is WCW at the time, and they're going for the Rockstar gimmick. Body slams, arm drags, and basic stuff on George South. South manages to make him look as good as he can. Slingshot suplex a la an old Tully Blanchard maneuver, leading to a decent enough victory here. And then we go to the run of the mill here. Hard shots and Van Hammer managing to do what he can, where he can, and ultimately manages to kind of get things going there. Thomas Rich, more accurately, with the York Foundation up next here. Rich is a guy that really is, kind of a, I guess, afterthought. Certainly in 1981, he's world champion for 4 days. 1991, he's in an afterthought match with Sting, and Sting hooks on the arm bars, ready to go, kind of getting him going, and ultimately trying to get things going in a positive direction as he were. Arm bars, arm locks, and the like. Super basic match. Sting, of course, respected and getting towards the major feud with Rick Rude, as it were, and Sting manages to lock on the Scorpion Deathlock, get a win, and says he's ready for Rude and the Dangerous Alliance going forward. And we will close on that note, but overall, more fun to be had by all with these reviews.